me, another interesting nuance is, and quite frankly, I'll blame the open source community and the open source developers for this. Even at HP and even at other large organizations that invest in open source, they often are investing in the features that they're looking for. And somewhere along the line, those well-intended, extremely competent developers care about their community, their tribe that they've built. And so they do work reviewing others' codes, providing comments and suggestions, and all of the maintainer activity that's required that they're not getting paid for. And they do it for a number of years, and they ultimately, particularly as we've now been in a place where security is more important, there are more requirements. You've got arbitrary people fuzzing your code, sending in all kinds of additional change requests because of these, and bug reports because of the tools that they've been running. And it's creating a larger cast of activities that are required by those maintainers that they're also not getting paid for. And that's part of the underpinning of the burnout that we're hearing about. So even in those situations, we have this lack of it's a lack of resources, right? Which is always the case, but we're having it in that foundation of the pizza.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everything from XZ to, every time I go to an open source summit, there's always the report by Jonathan Corbett talking about issues in the kernel. And I'm talking about the kernel, the longest running. These are very well paid developers, but they're not getting paid to do that maintenance activity, and they're frustrated. They're getting burnt out.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you a slightly different slant on it. A couple of times recently, I've described myself as a maintainer. And I don't have an output that's a chunk of code that I can show you, but I have an ecosystem that I've brought together that has an impact and that I maintain. And I engage around a broader picture internationally in that scene as well. And even, I don't know, I haven't got a copy to hand, but my stupid book, it's not a stupid book. It's a wonderful book.
I don't think it's a stupid book. It's a great book.
Well, it's a wonderful book that 26 people put a lot of work into creating an incredible content. It's only a stupid book because I had to read it so many times. But that I said I would never do it again. And I'm going to have to. I don't have a choice. I was talking to somebody about that this afternoon. There's some stuff that needs updating. There's no AI chapter. And the security chapter has to reflect the CRA and other stuff that's happening. So, we're just working out how we do that to get it out again. I suspect probably next summer 25. So there's a solid output that I'm a maintainer of, although I'm not a coder. And that meant that I had 2 weekends I didn't work and no holiday in 2022. Because every time I thought we were done, I ended up spending my holidays doing it. And it's one of those things where, what do? You don't want to let people down. It has to be the right quality. So how do you manage that? And I have a job that I'm paid in, but you work many, many more hours because there's a blurring also between what's your job and what's the stuff that you do in communities. And you build friendships with people who are in those communities, but then you go out for a drink or dinner and all you talk about is work. So it's a really tricky path to walk to be part of that open source ecosystem. And I don't know whether in 20 years, if open source survives in 20 years, whether we'll have got better at this or whether we will still be talking about the difficulties, because it's very hard to disengage from it, right? Because you are with other people and doing things for the collective that you want to be that high standard. And you all want it, you all want that polished, finished product that serves you all well. So it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 things I would highlight from this conversation. One is that the for developers, by developers, that one has to go. It's not accurate anymore. Not everybody's a developer, and it comes up in so many conversations, and people are like, if you want
documentation, Ildiko, read the code. Come on,
right?
This is how it works.
Yeah, but then there's user experience, and then there's
lawyers,
diagrams, the lawyers, the licenses, the policies. there are so many things that's not a developer thing. They will not work on it, and it's not for them all the time. Yeah. So that's one thing where I think there's some more evolution is about to come. And the other thing is, though, I think, Amanda, you mentioned that maintenance is cost. Like if a company gets involved in an open source project to maintain, then it's a cost, which is true. It's true. In itself, it's a true statement. But on the other hand, if they are using that open source software, they are doing maintenance no matter what. And if they are doing that maintenance downstream and never participate in the community to do it, it actually becomes more costly than doing it upstream in the first place. And I don't know if it's going to be the CRA or something else that just turns on the light bulb that there's always maintenance cost. And that's what I never understood, and I still don't understand when companies. I used to work for Ericsson, and I was paid to do some open source work, but on the margins, that on the pieces that didn't really matter, because then you don't have to think that much about IP, for instance, and all the what's happening with the license, who's liable for what, and let's not break any patents that we have. So I was paid to do some of it, and there were a lot of things that back in the day, I'm talking about 9 years ago, we should have contributed back, and we didn't. The company didn't, and the maintenance of deviating from upstream is just, it becomes insane. And then it becomes so costly that at one point it becomes unmaintainable downstream. So it's nuts, if you ask me. Because yes, there is a maintenance cost if you get involved, but there's an even higher cost if you don't. And there's an even higher risk if you don't.
And I think that we're still evolving understanding. What you were saying about the non-code is important in different ways. So it's important in terms of people's respect and recognition for the work they do. But it's also important for companies to understand, because if they don't invest in that broader landscape and they want to use the code and be part of the ecosystem, they're going to have a mess. You need to have that whole ecosystem, including policy people, including document writers, and including translators and DevRel people and the conference organizers and all the people that build an ecosystem to enable. And, some of it we do better than others, and some of it we'll do differently in a couple of years from the way we do it now. But you need an ecosystem that's invested in. I don't know how we get to that, get a better definition of public good and make everybody invest into one big pot and then share it out appropriately. I don't know. But that there needs to be better ways of covering that infrastructure cost. And it's not technical infrastructure, it's human infrastructure, and it's the people who make this tick. So that, I think the old Apache way, people over code, we need to recognize that there's a need for many people to do many different roles to enable what used to be done by companies to be done by companies and individuals, and to create that whole network and environment for the future.